lot of you have heard about the bounce of a sand wedge. What really is it? Well, bounce is the difference between the sole of the club and the leading edge. The leading edge is up here. So this angle is your bounce. This difference from that leading edge to the sole of the club, that's the bounce. Now this shaft's leaning backwards a little bit like I am over here. So I'm adding bounce whenever I lean the shaft backwards. When I lean the shaft forward, I take bounce off. So if I lean this forward now, you can see now I've leaned it forward, and now notice that this angle is nowhere near this angle that I had. Here was the angle of the bounce. You can see that 30 degrees, and now this angle is like 5. So lean the shaft forward, lean the club forward, less bounce and less loft. Lean it backwards like it was here, and you can add bounce. Another thing that will add bounce is when we open the club face. We're going to add loft too. So watch this. There's the leading edge, and now I open the club face. There's the club face more to the right. That adds loft and bounce. And if I close the club face, that takes bounce off and loft. You want to remember, very important to remember, that loft equals bounce. Very important. So when we lean the shaft forward, look at the lean, 77 degrees. That's 13 degrees less than 90. I've taken 13 degrees of bounce and loft off of this club. When I take the shaft and I put the ball more forward, now the shaft angle is pretty straight up and down. You're going to see it's at 87, so it's 3 degrees of lean. So I've only taken 3 degrees of loft and 3 degrees of bounce off of the club. You want to understand how to set up to add or take bounce off. So here's 2 shots that I'm hitting. One, I have the ball more toward the middle of my stance, and you can see that angle there, 88. That's 2 degrees of lean. So I'm taking 2 degrees of loft and bounce off. Now on the right, I've got the ball more back in my stance, and now that is 83. So now I've taken 7 degrees of loft and bounce off. So when you hit a shot, when you hit short game shots, you want to make sure your weight is in your lead side and that you match that address shaft angle about 1 to 3 inches in front of where you were at address. You can see I'm matching it right here. But how much lean did I have at impact? At impact, I had 80 degrees. I had 10 degrees of lean. So if my sand wedge had 10 degrees of bounce on it, I don't have any bounce. When we don't have any bounce, that sharp leading edge digs into the ground. Now on the left, I started with less forward shaft lean, and when I hit this shot and get to impact, notice I'm hitting this with 88 or only 2 degrees of lean. So if I had 10 degrees of bounce, I've got 8 degrees of bounce there. That's bounce. Bounce is your friend. Now the leading edge is not going to dig, and you really want to understand how to use that bounce in the sand wedge. I'm a big believer that if you release the club with your arms and hands, you will end up with the shaft not leaning as far forward. You can see, well, that's probably not a great angle to draw, but you can see that the club is in a position where there's bounce and loft in that club, and you can see there is the club face rotating as it goes by my hands. If you have this kind of release, that's how you use the bounce. That's going to keep you from digging and having a sharp leading edge going into the ground. So as you watch me hit this shot here, you're going to see I've moved into my left side. There's a nice release. And you really want to use bounce out of the rough. So there is the kind of release. That's just a free orbit of the club head. If you want to learn more about this, please visit my website, LarryRinker.com, or call or text me at 407-810-7489, and we can set up a short game lesson. Happy holidays. Thanks.